Hello there, my name is Alaydriem, and welcome back to another Minecraft Bedrock Redstone tutorial with your favorite cardigan-wearing Minecraft character. And today in this episode, I'll be showing you how to build this 6-type wood farm for your Minecraft Bedrock 1.20 world. Yes, that's right, this farm can harvest 6 different types of trees here in Minecraft Bedrock, including the brand new cherry wood tree available in Minecraft Bedrock 1.20. And this farm is incredibly flexible for what it offers. You can harvest 6 different types of trees. The only types of trees that you can't harvest are mangrove trees and dark oak trees. And more importantly, you can harvest the brand new cherry wood trees out of this farm. Now, if you want a farm that will do the netherwood, I have a separate tutorial over for that on the channel that you can check out. I'll have a link for that in the description. And if you also want a farm that will do mangrove trees, I also have a farm for that. And if you might have noticed, this is like the mangrove tree farm's little baby cousin. It's more or less the same design as what we've used for the mangrove farm. It just has a few pretty major tweaks to it so that it can work for a whole plethora of other types of trees. But if you already have that farm, this farm is not super difficult to convert into. And just to give a shout out once again to Old Rusty, because Old Rusty invented the original mangrove tree farm that I improved upon, and this is just another improvement on top of that. So that farm is truly the gift that keeps on giving. I'll have a link down in the description for him to check out if you want to go ahead to his channel and give him some love. Now, the 6 different types of wood that you can get from this farm are the spruce wood, the jungle, cherry, birch, oak. We're going to get that through the flowering azalea since we can't actually run oak trees through this, especially the large kinds. And then finally, the acacia trees. In addition to being super flexible, this farm is also fully AFK-able if you have access to an auto clicker either on your mouse or through keyboard commands. Basically, if you just plop down saplings here on the block of dirt where the farm starts at, this farm will do all of the work for you, including resetting. So it's pretty much identical to what we had over in the mangrove tree farm. With that being said, there is one minor gotcha with the cherry wood trees, and that's just how their spawn mechanics are. However, that ultimately will just result in some extra bone meal being spent in order to harvest them. So if you're running my bone meal farm, which will give you basically infinite bone meal, it's not really that big of a problem. Now, before we dive into the farm, let's talk a little bit about the mechanics of how this farm works and specifically how these trees work, because it's really important to understand some of the limitations here. So the acacia tree, as we see here, will always have one branch kind of swooping off into it in either direction. In the first form of the farm, we'll sweep that up and then sweep it out. The flowering azalea and azalea trees are basically miniature acacia trees. They do the exact same thing. They go up and then over 2 directions. And then the cherry tree here, well, it will do one of 2 things. We'll have either one arm that really sticks out really far and wide, or if we plant it here, we will have it with these 2 arms that come out. Now, in order to harvest all of these types of trees, we basically need to apply the same philosophy, and that is we need to slice it up in half. And here I'll take away all of the leaves for you so that you can really see what the tree structure looks like. But we need to slice away the arms of the tree in either direction first, and then we need to push that center column out, which then we can harvest like any of the normal straight trees that we have. So not too terribly complicated to work with. We basically, like I said earlier, repurpose our mangrove tree farm in order to do this. And then once we have that, we're able to collect basically anything. Now, this farm does have a second variant. So if you're using the birch or the spruce or any of the trees that just grow straight up and down, we can harvest those without needing to capture these arms because we know they aren't going to grow, and that saves about 15 seconds or so on total harvesting time. Now, cherry trees are a little bit unique in that they have very specific spawning requirements. You have to have a 5x5 area completely exposed to skyblock, basically. So anything above it, including leaves, which is incredibly annoying, have to be cleared out. So for instance, if we cleared out this 2 rows of leaves right here, they are blocking, covering the spawn spots. Then we bone meal this, bam, now our tree grows. Now, as far as I can tell, this 5x5 area with full access to skyblock, including the leaves, is a more recent change to how cherry trees work. I'm pretty sure Mojang was trying to prevent people from farming them. You used to be able to have kind of in one of these corners a pillar that went up that you could use kind of as a sweeper. In the pre-releases and what is ultimately going to be 1.20, this appears to be completely patched out. So unfortunately, we're going to have to let all of these leaves naturally despawn. Now, the good news is with this farm is that the vertical and horizontal sweepers that are working are going to clear out most of these leaves for you. If you want to be extra thorough, you could add yourself some side-to-side sweepers that will go vertical in the other direction, or basically any other direction. You can just add a delay circuit that triggers once those sweepers are done. I'm not going to go in a tutorial for that because you can just clone what I'm going to show you in this build, but it's just something to keep in mind because this is not going to be super bone meal efficient for these, and I'm sure that others will fix this and identify other solutions for this. But in the meantime, this will harvest pretty much anything that you need. Using the farm is incredibly simple. We just have a button right here that we press, throw down the wood that we want to harvest, and then the farm will go to work. It will push up the entire tree 1 block for us. We can immediately plant down another one. Our vertical sweepers will sweep out the arms of the tree if they are in this east-west axis, as I have shown here. Once they dock down at the bottom, our horizontal sweepers will clear out anything that is remaining. This also will work if the tree orients itself the other way. The tree orientation for cherry trees specifically is not consistent. It can either be north-south or east-west with how the arms grow out. This farm will take care of both of those situations. And as you can see here, this carves a pretty good path through all of these leaves. It is almost a perfect 5x5. There's just 1 or 2 areas that the sweepers just can't get access to, and that's mainly just a limitation of what we can attach to these flying machines right here. But if we clear out these extra blocks right here, once this machine fires back up again, bam, there you go. Now the farm is fired up and running. So with the mechanics of this farm covered, let's go ahead and get started with the tutorial. We're going to go ahead and start and build up a 3-stack pillar here. We're going to go over 6 blocks, place down a glass block, and then another 6 blocks in this direction. Place 2 blocks down right here. We're going to use some ladders so we can access the top, and then we're going to go up another 4. Go ahead and finish your ladder brigade all the way down, and grab yourself some pistons over here. We're going to put them with this 2 spacing, 3 spacing in the middle covering that glass block, buttons on top of each of these pistons, and then we're going to wire this entire bottom level up with redstone dust. We're going to cover all the way over to the very end here. Next, we're going to go ahead and build up 3 blocks, and then we're going to carve out this Y shape right here and knock out all of our temporary blocks. Make sure that you replace any dust that you may have dropped, and then solid blocks coming off over here to the right and left. You're also going to want to place pistons directly above and in line with the pistons down below, and again 2 block spacing. These top pistons are actually going to be offset 1 block behind them, so just make sure that these are directly above the redstone line that you have below. Wire everything up here on the top with the redstone dust, and you should have a setup that looks just like this. Next, we're going to go ahead and put in our stopper blocks that will stop our vertical flying machines, and we're going to extend out 2 pieces of obsidian for now. We will extend this out another 1, but we're going to conserve on space for the moment. Flipping around here to the back, you're going to go out 2 pieces of glass, and then you're going to place down 2 repeaters on 4 ticks. You actually want these oriented the other way. I will fix this later on in the video. This is a post-edit fix, but just know that those need to be pointed the opposite direction. And then we're going to just build up a glass staircase. It really doesn't matter how you have this oriented. If you want just to do a simple glass staircase like this, you can. If you want to have it more compact, you can compress it as I have shown here. Basically, we just want to make sure that we can staircase this glass down here at the bottom so that we can connect the other part of the machine. Again, not really complicated, just glass blocks. Go ahead and align all of this with redstone dust so the signal can connect up to here. Redstone dust on this block right here, and then we are going to flip on over. This is what the base of the machine looks like. I'll go ahead and pause, give you a second, and then we're gonna keep on moving. So coming over here to the front, you're going to want to place down some temporary blocks, and we're going to basically have this right above where this glass is. Place yourself a dispenser in this location, and then we're going to place a piece of dirt down and beneath it. And then in the back here, we're going to place 2 hoppers that feed into this dispenser so that we can feed it more easily with bone meal. You won't be able to place anything on top of this, but you will be able to add just a couple more extra pieces of bone meal. Go ahead and go down 2 blocks, place a sticky piston pushing into that solid piece of dirt. Then we're going to place a observer with the face down. And then we're going to place 2 more observers and cut out that middle one here so that this is pointed down here. Place some temporary blocks, and then we're going to place another sticky piston underneath that. That's going to push up and trigger our dispenser to basically dispense bone meal for us. Coming out here, 2 pieces of dirt. We're going to extend out 4 so that we can place down another sticky piston, and then grab yourself a piece of redstone block. Knock out that temporary block that you have right there. And this is the gist of our activation mechanism for our bone meal dispenser. We're going to extend out 4 solid blocks from here, and then we're going to line the sides of this sticky piston underneath the grass block with some pieces of obsidian to basically act as a emergency stop dock for our vertical flying machines. So with that now set in place, go ahead and grab yourselves a comparator. That comparator is going to compare if a block is set, and then we're going to feed that into a observer, and then we're going to extend out 2 blocks, and then we're going to line the right side of this, depending upon how you're looking at it. I'm going to call it the right, with 2 pieces of obsidian, and then another 2 pieces of obsidian here in the back. This is going to serve as the basis of a pulse extender. So we're going to have a repeater, and then another repeater feeding into it on 4 ticks, wired up with redstone dust. Continuing on with the build, we're going to place a glass block here, here, and here, and then that sandstone block actually needs to be a piece of glass. I'll fix that here in just a second. And then we're going to add another pulse extender, doing the exact same thing with redstone dust around it. So 4 ticks going into a 1 tick item here, and with a regular piston facing down. Then we're going to grab ourselves another redstone block, place that right here. And then we're going to place a button on here just so that we can activate things a little bit later. Next, we're going to grab ourselves solid blocks and then just connect this line all the way to this glass block. Next, we're going to go ahead and add in our activation mechanism for the farm. So come on down to the bottom where this dirt block is and knock it out. We're going to actually extend out 3 blocks total, feed 2 hoppers into that temporary block that you have right there, obsidian on top of the second hopper, redstone dust on the sticky piston, and with a comparator pointed into that piece of obsidian. Then we're going to replace this with just our standard T flip-flop using droppers. So place a dropper here, and then you're going to want to place a dropper directly beneath it, feeding into it. It's a whole lot easier to do this if you just use dirt or any other type of solid block. Don't try to stack droppers on top of one another. It's just difficult to do. Place a temporary or a permanent stackable item, doesn't really matter which one it is. I'm going to use redstone dust because I have it on me. Button on this dropper, and then you can test that this dropper fires on and off. On the right side of this row of solid blocks, we're going to place down some obsidian, and this is so that we basically don't break the farm. So extend this out over here, and then we're going to place down a pulse extender using comparators. Just going to use 2. Redstone dust here, and then in the back here, and then here. So this should now all be connected. If you go ahead and give this a flip of this lever here, this farm should stop working. I recommend, if you don't want your item that you use for your T flip-flop to fly out, place some trapdoors around this. Mangrove looks good because you have a nice little hole in there that you can see. Very easy to do. We're going to place a temporary block here with a sticky piston facing down, and then we're going to have another observer pointed with the face, the dot pointed down. We'll knock out that temporary block, place a regular piston right by this observer that we have right here. So it's oriented like that. And then down here beneath this observer, place a speck of redstone dust. Coming over to this side, we're going to place an observer detecting when that solid redstone block comes down, and then we're going to add another pulse extender over here on this side. So again, redstone dust, we're going to have a repeater on 1 tick with a repeater on 4 ticks coming into it. You can just orient it like that, or you can orient it like this. It really doesn't matter what you have the orientation set to. Then you're just going to line the rest of this redstone dust and then have that signal carry out of this all the way over to our topmost dropper that we have here. So you can just line the rest of this with redstone dust, and then finally place down a repeater right about here so that we have a nice strong signal going into that. So this is the core of our activation system and detection system for when a tree grows. You can give this a test by pressing this button here. You should start hearing this dispenser tick. And if you place down a solid block, you should see that comparator light up. If you don't, that means you need to add items in this dispenser that we have, because the comparator works based on detecting if there's actually items in this, not whether there's a block there. So as you can see here, that should detect that, push that block up, and eventually that will just burn its signal out, and that piston will stop pushing up and down. Make sure that this burnout signal is working correctly, because if this does not work, you will not be able to place any of your trees down after the first one. Once you have that sorted and good, you can go ahead and turn this off, and then we should make sure that we have a piece of redstone dust placed right there as well. So you should see that redstone block be pushed down. If you don't, make sure you get that redstone piece of dust re-added. So with this, you now have our activation mechanism and block detection for when trees grow good to go. Now all we need to do is just to reset this component. Go ahead and grab yourself a lever or a button. Really doesn't matter. You can flip that up, and now your farm is perfectly reset. Next, we're going to drop in our tree type selection circuit that will allow us to decide whether we're harvesting trees with branches or just trees that go straight up and down. So we're going to have a solid block here with a sticky piston facing into it, comparator on the back of this block, and then over here you're going to have a target block behind this comparator as shown here with a comparator feeding into it. We're also going to have a comparator feeding out of that block, and this would now be a really good time to actually extend these out to 3 blocks now that we are working down here. Coming back here to our target block, we're going to extend that comparator into a solid block, dig out 3 spaces beneath it. We're going to place a repeater on 4 ticks with a piece of redstone dust. Target block here in this position with the sticky piston facing into it. And then we are going to place a comparator, dust, and then we're going to create a quick delay circuit with some redstone dust feeding out of it as shown here. So now we need to wire up the rest of this. So place this with redstone dust underneath this block, and then we're going to create just a simple ladder. You can use any type of block that you want, glass, sandstone, whatever works for you, and just wire this up to this bottommost piston. I recommend you add a repeater down here just so that you can boost the signal in case it for some reason is dying out. And then we can go ahead and finish running the rest of this wire. Go ahead and run this wire right here to the back of this piston, then under this piece of obsidian repeater, and wire this up with dust going all the way to that side. Next, we're going to make this so that we can actually select what type of tree that we want. And to do that, we're going to basically invert the signal and cause these 2 pistons that we have to alternate. So to do that, you're going to want to place a redstone torch on this piston right here so that we can invert the signal, dust, and then we're going to staircase down with dust, down, and then we're just going to dig underground basically. So just run this wire underneath here, dig down, dust. Same thing over here. We're going to extend this all the way over to this last piece of obsidian, and then we're going to start laddering up. Make sure you add a repeater down here so the signal strength gets boosted, and then wire this redstone dust to the back of this piston. So with all of that set up, you now should have a setup that looks like this. And while we're back here, we're also going to do some of our impulse detection circuit that will determine whether we need to actually fire off the rear flying machines or not. So you're going to add yourself 2 pistons in this orientation and in this location. Then you're going to add yourself an observer, pulling out of it. So the dot should be facing towards the back of the farm. Then you're going to grab yourselves 2 redstone repeaters, set them both on 4 ticks, and then we're going to stop right there for now so that we can verify that everything is good. Make sure that when you give this lever a flick, that this other side extends out and that this block retracts, and you want to make sure that none of your redstone lines are crossed and wired, because if they are, then you're going to have a really bad day when you start this flying machine. We are going to leave this farm in a position where only the rear flying machines are going to set off while we're building it. This is a safety measure to make sure we don't actually break anything, so make sure that this is configured as shown. And now let's work on this impulse detection circuit that we have over here. The impulse detection circuit is extremely straightforward. Just have yourself a dropper with a hopper feeding into it. You're going to have a block behind that hopper and then 2 blocks over here on the left. You're going to place torch here and here, place comparator down, redstone dust, and you're actually going to place a redstone dust there on that other block by the torches, and then place the dropper with 2 items. It can be any item you want as long as they're stackable, and you can just line the top. We're going to work on the back here real quick. So we're going to have a solid block with an observer pointed into it with the dot pointed into that. Connect this up with redstone dust, and now this circuit is now live. Make sure again that you place a piece of redstone dust there on that item by the torch. If you don't, you're going to have this problem right here where this actually never fully activates. So as you can see here, that is incorrectly in the on position when it should be off. That should only pulse when we want, and you see it didn't reset. The fix for that is to simply place a piece of redstone dust here. That will release the hopper and allow the items to fall back into the dropper. So quick test, add an item in this block here, remove it. You should see that torch flash on, then back off, and your dropper should have 2 items in it. The next circuit that we'll be building is our vertical flying machines. I'm going to show you how to build all of them at the exact same time. We're going to start with placing 3 honey blocks here on this piece of obsidian with a honey block extending up in the middle. And then you're going to grab yourself a sticky piston and place them directly in front of these buttons that you have. Next, we're going to grab ourselves more honey blocks, go 2 blocks up, should be equal height with this obsidian that you have. And then we're going to add in our observers to the side in order to fire those off. So you're going to want to swing around here, place an observer in this position, and then around this side, we're going to want to do the exact same thing. I recommend that you place a temporary block basically here on this outside position, here, and then on the other side, that temporary block position is just flipped. So you can place that here, and then you want an observer with the dot pointed into the honey. If you have to remove this piston, you can go ahead and remove that and just re-add that. Sometimes it's a little bit easier. Make sure that you remove the temporary block as I have shown there before you proceed on with that. The other side is exactly the same, but before we get to that, we want to add an observer pointed down into this piston that we have right here to detect when these flying machines dock. Over here, like I said, it's the exact same thing. Place an observer, and then sticky piston facing up. Make sure you delete those temporary blocks that we have, otherwise your flying machines will not be happy. Next, place 2 pieces of glazed terracotta, any type, directly above the open pieces of honey, and then we're going to extend out 2 more pieces of honey horizontally, as we have shown here. Go ahead and place another temporary block here on the outside so that we can place another observer. So it's going to go in this position, and then on the other side it's flipped. Make sure you remove these temporary blocks so that your flying machine works. Here on the right side, exact same thing here and here. Honey block here behind these topmost observers. And then we're going to add ourselves our regular pistons. They can go just in this position, and they're going to be staggered kind of in this up and down shape that we have shown here. Make sure that all these pistons are facing up, and then we're now cleared. Come down here, add yourselves a sticky piston. Make sure the sticky piston's facing down. It's very easy to misclick with this, as you can see here. Even I can't get it right. Sometimes it just takes a little while to click. I don't know why. Sometimes getting it oriented is just the hardest thing to do in the whole wide world. But once you have them in place, But once you have it in place, your vertical flying machines are now done. Again, make sure you removed any temporary blocks that you have. And what I recommend at this point, just to make sure flying machines don't get away from you, is you add a piece of obsidian here and here, basically directly above where the flying machine would launch out at. This is just a safety precaution. If you're 100% confident in your redstone, you don't have to do this. These are just temporary. But if you're like me and make mistakes in some of your redstone builds, it's a nice thing to have, because your flying machines, if you mess up, can get away from you. And how do I know? Well, I know because those got away from me. You see those all the way up there? Those are flying machines from another build I did, and they're just gone. And I'm never getting them back ever again. So don't be like me. Be like me and add yourself some stopper blocks so that your flying machines don't get away if you accidentally trigger something. Next, we're going to work on our horizontal flying machines. So we're going to extend this line out so it's 8 blocks long in total, and that's going to feed into a block. Have yourselves a repeater pointed into that solid block that we have right here, redstone dust on top, and then wire the rest of this up with redstone dust. For the time being, knock out one piece of redstone dust so that you don't accidentally trigger your flying machines while you're working on them. Trust me, don't ask me how I know. Then we're going to go ahead and build up a step ladder. So up one piece of glass block, up another, knock out that middle one, up another, knock out that middle one, go over 2 more, and then we're going to actually make this a solid block with a repeater, and then wire the rest of this up with redstone dust so it's all connected. Next, we're going to place a piston that this repeater is going to face into, glaze terracotta in front of it, and then we're going to build another impulse detection circuit. So observer pointed down, sticky piston, another observer pointed down, temporary block beneath that with the observer pulling out of it. Go ahead and delete that temporary block. And then this is another impulse detection circuit, also configured for 2 pulses. So we're going to build it exactly the same. We're going to have a row of blocks right here to build off of. You're going to have repeater on 4 ticks, repeater on 4 ticks. That's going to feed into a dropper. There's going to be a hopper facing into that dropper. And then we're going to have some more blocks underneath this to build a platform. Block here, and then 2 blocks right here. Go ahead and place your 2 torches in these positions, dust, dust, and dust, and then you're going to add yourself 2 comparators as shown here. Drop in 2 temporary items. I'm going to use redstone as usual, and now we have our impulse detection circuit now configured. Now for the back here, I like to use a redstone lamp. You don't have to. It's just a good visual indicator for when these rear flying machines go off. And we're just going to ladder on down from this position right here. Very simple, just gonna ladder in this way, and then we're gonna basically line this up with our redstone line that we have coming out that points into this right here. So as you can see, that's gonna line up with that. Repeater, wire this all up with some redstone dust. You're gonna want to go even on top of this redstone lamp, and then hook this line of redstone dust all the way up to that repeater underneath that piece of obsidian. As a quick test, go ahead and place a torch here, and you should see that piston extend and push out that block, and you should see that redstone lamp fire off and this whole redstone circuitry flip off. If for some reason you don't see that, go back in the video, make sure that your redstone is all wired up correctly. If it's not, for some reason, you're probably just missing something in the redstone line here. So with this now set up, we can go ahead and build these rear vertical flying machines, which is incredibly straightforward. We're just going to build some more scaffolding here on the back to trigger this. It's going to be the exact same. So we place that piece of glazed terracotta up 2 blocks, piston, delete temporary blocks, up another 2 blocks, piston, delete the temporary blocks. One more time, so we have 4 pistons in total, and then we're going to place terracotta in front of each of them. Coming around here to the back, we just need to wire all of this up with some more redstone dust and place in our repeaters to activate this as well. So place that there, and there. You're going to want to make sure you have a repeater wired into each of these pistons, and then just staircase this up with glass as shown here. The orientation really doesn't matter. We will need to extend the pulse duration here around the 3rd piston that we have right here. So what I recommend you do is build out this kind of orientation right here. We can just ladder this up with redstone dust, and then we're just going to extend that signal out. So place a block here, and then over. Gonna go up to a solid block, have a repeater go into that so we save on a block. Dust right here to wire that up. dust here, stack a piece of glass on top, and then we can just staircase this up to this topmost piston and wire it all up with redstone dust. Make sure that before you start working on your flying machines that you have all of these pistons working in concert and at the same time with one another. So as you can see here, all of these are lit up and working. If for some reason they aren't, just make sure you have good pulse detection in each of these. And now we are ready to build our rearmost flying machines. Again, after your test, reset the mechanism so that all of these are reconfigured, and then replace all of your glazed terracotta that may have been pushed out by these pistons. The flying machines themselves are rather straightforward, so I will show you how to build all 4 of them at the same time. Place a piece of obsidian behind these glazed terracottas that you have. We're going to make a cute little plus sign here in the front. It's going to be in the corner of this glazed terracotta. Make sure it's a plus sign, not whatever I was trying to make right there. Same thing on this 3rd level, and exactly the same thing up here. Next, we're going to go ahead and pop in some observers. So switch around here on the outer edge, place an observer pointed into this frontmost piece of slime. Then we're going to flip around here to the other side and place an observer pointed down into that other piece of slime that we have. Just go ahead and use the tower trick that I'm doing here to do this. And then you can just place some temporary blocks right here. Just make sure you clean up those temporary blocks once you are done as shown. On the front here, go ahead and add our regular pistons. This is what is going to be pushing our blocks. Go ahead and just build this as shown here. Continue all the way up. Then we're going to loop around here to the back. You can go ahead and grab your sticky pistons and place them in this position right here. Next, we need to add the rear dock of this farm. So go ahead and place a temporary block here in this position. It can be any block you want. It doesn't have to be glazed terracotta. Once that temporary block is in place another block right beside it as shown here. That block should be in line with that sticky piston, so the sticky piston can grab onto it. Then coming around here to the back, we're going to create a line of slime. So slime blocks in this weird L-shaped pattern. I'm going to do this for each of the pieces of terracotta that we have, so we fully enclose it. And then along the back here, grab yourself some obsidian and line the back so that we have a rear dock for this. Once that obsidian is in place, grab yourselves your observers again, and we're going to do the same trick. Have an observer feed into this corner of the slime. Make sure you knock out any temporary blocks that you may have. And then up here, you can just add a few temporary blocks so that you can continue the same trick upwards. Once all those temporary blocks are knocked out, go ahead and add in your last sticky piston in this position here. Make sure it's pointed out here. Make sure you don't delete any blocks, and right here. And then you should have all of your horizontal flying machines now installed. The next circuit that we're going to work on is our rear Cubemaker circuit. So we're going to extend out 3 blocks and then go up 4 with a piece of obsidian here on the left side. Knock out your temporary blocks. We're going to place 2 temporary blocks above that with a piece of obsidian on top, 2 more on top, obsidian, 2 more on top, and then obsidian as shown here. And then behind this, you're going to add a temporary block, temporary block, temporary block. And then we're going to actually fix this minor mistake that I made where I accidentally knocked that out. So again, have temporary block here. We're going to have a piston against that temporary block. And you can go ahead and knock out that temporary block that you have right there. And then staircased up just 1 more, we're going to have an observer. So just like this, it's going to be 1 block higher than the piston itself. And then we're just going to build a platform behind it that observer feeds into, and then a repeater that powers this piston. So extend out 2 blocks behind each of these observers. Go ahead and grab yourself a repeater. That redstone repeater can be either here or directly by the observer. Make sure it's set to 4 ticks, and then grab yourself some redstone dust and place that on top of all 3 of these blocks and the piston. So all 3 of the blocks, the piston, all 3 of these blocks, all 3 of the blocks, and the piston. This is the rear stop of our horizontal flying machines. So you're going to want to make sure that this is aligned correctly. This would be a really good time to test that these are aligned. So grab yourself a redstone torch and trigger this on and off really quick. You should see your flying machines take off, and if you have everything aligned perfectly, this flying machine should come to the very end here. It should dock with this piece of obsidian, be pushed out, and then dock back with our rear docking platform that we have. If for some reason you have something misaligned, just go ahead and check the alignment and get that corrected. If for some reason your flying machines aren't flying, this is the time to fix it while you still have the resources and you haven't built the rest of the farm. So again, as always, when testing, we're going to have to turn that lever back off. So now we're going to go ahead and work on our rear Cubemaker. Our Cubemaker is what is going to collect all of our items for us. So we're actually just going to build a row of observers directly by these pieces of obsidian. You're going to want to go all the way down and then 2 more down past this piece of obsidian right here. That will have us level with any of the items that are flowing through. Coming out of that, you're going to have another observer that's going to detect when that previous observer detects a block. And then we're going to have a piston pointed in this direction against those. Basically, anytime a block passes over that, a log, it's going to trigger this piston, and that's how we're going to collect all of our items. Now, we're going to go ahead and build the actual Cubemaker itself. So come out 2 blocks here by this second observer, and then we're going to send out, this is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and 12. So that's basically the piston push limit extension that we can have. Can't really have it any longer than that without a pistons breaking. Then we're going to have a observer detect when something reaches the end of this, and that's going to push all of our items that we have here in our Cubemaker out. Extend this up to the exact same height. Come back down here, and we're just going to repeat this pattern all the way up. So you're going to have pistons with sandstone right behind them, and then another piece of sandstone here on the left side, and then we're going to repeat that all the way up. On each of these rows of sandstone, you're going to want to place down redstone dust, and then fill in all of this other space right here with our pistons. You're going to need a lot of pistons for this, so make sure you bring them all around and then have them in your inventory. These pistons are going to extend above this line of redstone dust, and then over here we're going to have a repeater on 1 tick or 0 ticks, however you want to call it, pointed into that line of redstone dust. Next, we're going to wire up all of these observers. So come down here, we're going to have a platform that feeds beneath this. Make sure that this first block is actually a solid block. Don't use glass because glass will not transmit a redstone signal. I'll show you how to fix that here in just a second. But this is going to be a glass ladder going all the way down. Going to extend that down to here. And then on here, this is all just going to be lined with redstone dust. Again, I'll show you how to fix this in just a second, but just make sure that that first block coming out of the observer is a solid block, not glass. Over here on this side, we're going to do the exact same thing, create a ladder pattern with redstone dust on it. So just zigzag this glass block as shown here. Going to go all the way up to the top so we make a nice staircase, and then line all of this with redstone dust all the way down this pillar. Once you have this in place, we are going to connect these 2 pillars together. And to do that, we're going to come out here to about the middle and just build ourselves a platform. And you guessed it, we're going to build ourselves another double pulse detection circuit so that we don't transmit a signal too many times. Have redstone repeater with a repeater going into 4 ticks feeding into it. And then we're just going to curve this signal around, go into somewhere in the middle. It doesn't really matter as long as we are carrying the signal over. Have a redstone repeater right there, and that is our rear Cubemaker now done. Now, if you notice, this bottom one works, but if we go up here to the top, or basically anyone that have a solid block, it doesn't, and that's because we did not place a solid block here in this first position. Make sure that you have a solid block in this position, otherwise you'll have this issue right here. I've had a few people note this in the mangrove tree farm, and this is one of the problems that they ran into. So just to be clear, these have to be solid blocks so that the pistons or the observers can basically submit a signal through them. Now just make sure you test basically each of these positions, top, bottom, go up 2, 3. You should see that if you place a block here, these pistons eject this block. And there you go. Now your rear Cubemaker is now done. And now we can move on to our upper cube maker. Now our rear cube maker is more or less the same. We're going to extend out a single solid block from that piece of obsidian that we placed earlier, and then we're going to extend up at least 15 blocks. You can go higher if you want. The key with this is to just make sure you clear the top of the horizontal flying machines. Place a piece of obsidian on top of that, and then you can delete all the any temporary blocks that you created. So to build these docking platforms, we're going to build out a small little platform right here, and then we're going to pop in a piston here underneath and behind this piece of obsidian. Once that piston is in place, you're going to want to drop in 2 repeaters here on 4 ticks. Make sure you add some more blocks behind this. Dust on the piston, dust on these positions here and here. And then we're going to ladder up as shown here, and then have an observer in front of this. So block continues up just like this, block on top, and have an observer right here. Make sure that the face is on the outside and the dot is pointed in. That way we can detect this and send the circuit all the way down. And this is the first of our docking stations for our vertical flying machines. We're just going to repeat this process for the other 3 vertical flying machines that we have. So go 2 over, place a piece of obsidian here, and then we're going to build the exact same thing. So extend over, 1 block over, create ourselves a ladder pattern. It's going to go up 4 blocks total with a observer with the dot oriented this way into the contraption. Redstone dust on all of this. Go ahead and knock these blocks out so we can place a piston in, then place in a redstone repeater on 4 ticks, redstone repeater on 4 ticks, and then another piece of redstone dust here. So these are our left flying machine docks. We're going to repeat the exact same thing and just mirror it. So go over 3 blocks, obsidian, and you know the drill at this point. You could figure out the rest of this. It's exactly the same. We're just going to mirror it so that the contraptions are now on the right side instead of the left side. So with our docking machines now in place, it's time for the truly scary part of this farm, and that's testing that these vertical flying machines actually get captured and get sent back by this redstone contraption. So this would be a great time to double check and review everything. It would also be a great time if you're on a single player world to make a save and a backup save of your world, because this is one of those things that if these flying machines get away from you, it's just bye-bye Betsy. So take a save of your world, and then once you're confident and you're ready to press the button, press any one of these buttons right down here. You should see all 4 of these flying machines launch. You should see them go all the way up to the top here, and then you will see them get captured. If everything's oriented correctly, they will get pushed back, and then they will float all the way back down and go back into their nice little obsidian home that we have created for them. And if you did everything correctly, it should look just like this. The cube makers themselves are incredibly easy. We're just going to extend out 3 blocks so we have a nice 90-degree angle right here. Going to have an observer shown like this with a dot pointed up, and we actually want to flip this observer around, and then we're just going to extend this all the way over. So we're going to extend this over to the middle. Gonna leave this middle spot open because there's no items that are ever going to be pushed in that middle spot. So same thing, extend over to here. Gonna go ahead, red dot facing up on top of each of these, and then we're gonna place a piston feeding out. This is going to push items that are coming up into our cube maker. Coming out of this observer, we're going to go over 4 blocks, and then we're going to have the exact same thing going on here. So we're going to have a observer with the face down, observer with the face out, and then a piston that is going to be facing up. That piston is going to push our blocks up, and then just repeat this for each of these positions that we have here. Once you have all of your pistons in place, we can then start work on our actual cube maker itself, which is once again fairly straightforward. We're just going to place a piston here, so 2 blocks up, And then the exact same thing that we did down below, we're going to have redstone and sandstone behind this. And then we're just going to do this on alternating layers going up 12 blocks, which is the piston push limit. Once we have all of these pistons in place going up over, we are then going to add our detection circuit that will detect when a block has been reached here. And to do that, we're just going to place observers directly above where blocks ultimately are going to be set. We're going to include that gap there in the middle, and then we're going to cover all of these observer dots with a piece of redstone dust. Next, we're going to build our double pulse detection circuit. Since we're already using observer, we don't need to add a new one in. It's just a matter of us adding in the circuitry. So a repeater with 4 ticks going into it. Extend this out with redstone dust as shown here. I recommend that by that middle observer that you also have a piece of redstone dust feeding out to it. I will show you how to make that change here in just a second. And then we're going to cover all of these positions down here with redstone dust. Lastly, we just need to wire this up, so cover these middle sections right here with a block and redstone dust with a repeater pointed into it. Once you have a repeater in all of these positions, just create yourself a glass staircase that's going to extend out, and then we're just going to go up and down all the way so that we connect all of these components. So simple glass staircase, simple glass staircase, simple glass staircase, and then connect all of this up with redstone dust. And now we should be good to go. Now, if you notice right here, this will not activate unless you have a observer or a repeater coming out of that middle pulse extender right there. The signal just is not strong enough in some instances, so just put a repeater here on 1 tick, 0 ticks, and you should see that that should fire. If for some reason that isn't firing, go ahead and just make sure that you have redstone in all the correct positions. In this case right here, that block needed to be glass because I misclicked. But once that's in place, you should see that all of these blocks should push out. Make sure you test each of these positions. It's very, very easy to have a position where something doesn't fire. This is just a bad spot for you to break your farm if for some reason these aren't all firing. But once you've tested everything and verified that all of these blocks are pushing out, congratulations, you are now done with this farm, and the only thing left for you to do is start harvesting your trees. Replace this redstone dust right here, which is your safety latch. Double check that there are 2 pieces of redstone dust in each of these dispensers. Make sure that that dispenser is filled up with bone meal. If it's not filled up with bone meal, go ahead and grab yourselves 9 stacks, and then grab yourself your favorite type of wood and get ready to start harvesting. I recommend that you have a cherry tree or any of the trees that generate a Y pattern, and then just a regular straight tree so that you can test both configurations. Go ahead and give this button a press. Make sure for the cherry trees and acacia and the flowering azalea that block is extended right there, and you should see your farm fire right up the very first time. If you get one of these small trees, it'll harvest that too. Really doesn't matter whether it's doing a small or a large. Just make sure that this flying machine actually is sending all of these items over. Quick test right here is confirmed that this is indeed all working, and then we're just going to confirm that our horizontal flying machines are also working and sending everything to the correct location. So once this docks, you should see those rear flying machines send off. Those will push all of these pieces of cherry logs. Oh, they're so beautiful bricks. I so love the cherry blocks here in this game. Those are going to go ahead and push those all the way over. You should see these fly and get pushed in. If you need more blocks, you can just generate another tree. And then at this point, you've pretty much verified that your tree farm is working. I do recommend that you give it a test with the spruce trees. So down here, if you flip this lever off, you'll activate the vertical only tree mode that doesn't have the arms. You should see your tree grow up. Now, there's going to be a slight delay before these flying machines basically trigger off, but it's about 15 seconds faster doing it this way than it is having the vertical machines also go off at the same time. Rate-wise for this farm, you're going to have a tree harvested in the vertical mode that's just one straight up and down tree like spruce or birch, you're going to get one tree harvested every 15 seconds. And then for the other types of trees, about once every 65 to a minute 15, you're going to have a brand new tree harvested. So with that, you are now the proud owner of a 6-type tree farm that will also harvest cherry wood trees for your Minecraft Bedrock 1.20 world. I know that we're a little bit early for Minecraft 1.20, but go ahead and build this now, and this way you can just drop cherry trees in, and then you're good to go. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you watching this video. If you're watching this video all the way to the end, if you're on 50 minutes, please consider leaving a like. Please consider subscribing, and please consider sharing this with your network of friends. I would really appreciate it. It really does help the channel, and I build these videos for y'all, so share it with the people who you love and care for and want to have infinite wood. Finally, if you have any questions, comments, or anything else you want to talk about, feel free to leave a comment down below. I do read every comment, and I do try to reply to every comment that's talking about a question or has something that they want to talk about. So leave a comment down below if you want to talk about anything. Always love talking to y'all. But that's going to be it for me in this tutorial. As always, thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.